We're back after an amazing week at Ecamm's Creator Camp in Amesbury, Massachusetts. I'm sitting here with Ryan Brenneman from Miri, and what a week.
It was a lot of fun, and also it was very interesting to see just the amount of enthusiasm from the teams. Like, you just don't see that a lot. And honestly, I felt left out because I was not a part of the Creator Camp this year. But I will be next year. Because it looked like it was just a blast from morning to night.
But you spoke to this. You had sort of a unique role in this conference. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Well, I think, Speedify got the phone call first that basically said, like, you're coming up. Mm-hmm. We have some internet challenges. What can you do? And then that inevitably led to a phone call to me to say, hey, Ryan, once again, we're going somewhere. What can we do to help?
What can we do?
And, really we evaluated, once I got on the phone with Katie at Ecamm, we could really identify that maybe it wasn't just an internet challenge. And sometimes, that's the common phrase that people use, like, I have bad internet. Mm-hmm. Well, in many scenarios, the internet itself might not be bad. The local network could be absolutely terrible.
And so there's a lot of flavors of bad internet.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we don't expect people who operate these type of venues. This was at a brewery,
primarily
a
at a brewery. Yep.
They're not experts in this type of stuff, mm-hmm. right? And so they go out, they buy commercial off-the-shelf routers. They could be purchased, something at Walmart that is a consumer grade, and then they're throwing that up in their business. They're putting it behind like a captive portal, but none of this stuff is enterprise grade. It's certainly not meant for like high density amount of users. They primarily buy it because they need to do point of sale orders and take payments from people mm-hmm. who want to purchase a beer. But this is inevitably what happens, right? We loop a lot of these problems into one category, which is the internet's bad. And I think ISPs are kind of like, they deal with this stuff all the time, right? No. Your internet's mm-hmm. not bad. You live in a house built in the 1800s, it's all brick, and you have one Wi-Fi router in your basement, and you're expecting to get great internet on mm-hmm. the second floor to stream TV. Yeah,
you plug in Cat 6 to your router, and you'll be doing great right there.
You'll be doing absolutely great. Mm-hmm. So what we did for Ecamm is, look, we packed up the large Pelican case. You know how big it was because you carried it home.
70 pounds later.
70 pounds later. We brought Netgear switches. We brought Netgear access points in their AV system, but all of that was being powered by the Miri router for internet connectivity.
Here she is.
There she is. Was this one of the units that we actually ran?
This is the unit. This is it. Yep.
The entire Ecamm. So when we looked at this, and speaking to Katie, the big thing was, like, we know that we have about like 100 plus users on the system. We know that, we've got to account for different ISPs coming in to be able to do the live stream through CCTV that they wanted to do, the Creator Camp TV series. We know that they had failed last year for the stream, and that was something that, a non-negotiable was we're not going to fail this year for streaming. So a lot of this came down to just kind of like building out our own network and connecting Miri to not only the existing network, but also new data sources. So the router itself was connected to the venue's Wi-Fi. They had given us their office network, but that router actually only had 2.4. It didn't have 5, so we can definitely tell the age of the router at that point. It's obviously not utilizing some of the newer bands that are within the Wi-Fi range that the router itself can take advantage of. But then we just started loading up SIMs. And the other thing that comes into play when we do like site surveys is, what's the building look like, right? So this is in a section of town that's kind of a little bit in a valley. So that's problem number one. Super tall trees around it, really scenic location.
All brick.
It's all brick building. And we're not talking about like
old
2 or 3 layers.
Industrial, yeah.
We're talking about like 6 or 7 layers of brick. We were at the back of the venue, and that tends to be like, sometimes it's the exact opposite of where the cell tower is trying to connect through. There's a saturation of people in the building, which are trying to connect to cell towers, and all of that RF challenges that come into play. The wireless mics are all operating within the wireless spectrum, the same as all the routers.
Yeah, this is a room filled with people all trying to do their own live streams, all trying to film their own content. So
correct. These are the site surveys that I tend to do before I live stream, but oftentimes aren't in many of the considerations for a lot of people who just say, hey, I'm having this thing at a remote venue, and I've been told that they have good internet.
Yep.
Well,
yeah, and they'll show up, they'll do a little test stream, say, oh, it works great, and then 100 people show up, and it all falls apart.
the whole thing falls apart, which is exactly what we experienced. We experienced, and you and I were watching this happen,
Yep.
their internal network completely went down for, minutes at a time.
Yep.
It just went offline. The thing to me, though, is like, gosh, they also can't make any sales at that venue in there, too, because their network is really down.
That was their actual network.
Correct. So planning around that. The router itself had a 4G, 5G SIM. We had 2 hotspots that were tethered to it. We had 2 more hotspots that were connected on the WAN connection. And of course that Wi-Fi. So we had 7 total data connections and then started loading up the pair and share devices as well. And that's really the only reason why we were able to accomplish what we were able to accomplish, because the actual throughput speeds were relatively low.
Yeah.
And so then it becomes thinking outside of the box, where it's like, you know what? Need to order that Starlink mini kit, because we could have popped that up onto the roof outside, or ran it out a door and just like brought a Ethernet cable through the door. The other thing that we're starting to consider a lot of now is just the cellular antenna systems. Wilson makes powered amplifiers. There are directional 4x4 MIMO 5G antennas that people sell that we could put up on a tripod and basically just aim this thing around until we could hit the tower. And so those are the little things that are going to make you successful when you're trying to host something, even if it's not live streaming, right? How do you have access points that can handle high saturation of users? How many access points do you need for that to be effective? How are those access points configured in mesh mode so that they can intelligently shuttle traffic between one access point and another? What bands are they using? What's the Wi-Fi saturation? That's stuff that is irregardless of the internet, things that are critically important when people are trying to conduct something at a venue that's not on a fixed location.
Well, it sounds like you got a budding side business here. He'll do the hardware and he'll set it up for you.
We thought about creating these kits in a box, but that's really what we did for Ecamm, right? We created the kit and had brought all of this stuff up. We brought up like 6 Netgear access points.
Way more than you'll ever need.
Way more than we ever needed, but
you weren't going to be able to get it once you were there.
Correct, and we didn't know what we were walking into. So the whole point was this was no fail, and we were able to accomplish that. We ended up standing up a second network at the Ecamm office, just because in this town they have one internet provider, and it goes out randomly. It just goes out throughout the entire town, and this is something we heard from multiple businesses saying, like, "Yep, our internet just drops." Well, so
can't make any sales today.
Correct. So we threw up a Miri router, another switch, and another access point inside the studio room at Ecamm, and it was just the failover. So we had a T-Mobile SIM card, and I had a Samsung Flip 5 phone tethered to the Miri. So we had their internet and those 2 other sources, and the whole intent there was when they were live streaming for the event from that venue, they just had the emergency backup. They had a little bit better situation in terms of like where their building sat in the town and the cellular coverage. We didn't have as many challenges as we did inside this microbrewery, but nonetheless, we were able to guarantee this thing stayed live for them.
Incredible. Well, yeah, that's the Miri router.
Yeah.
It's something else.
It really is fantastic. And I think, look, the big takeaway is that the router is one component of what equates to be an essential or a successful event for many people. The router is important, the internet is important, be able to bond multiple connections is really important, but sometimes the thing that fails is the thing that we just don't necessarily consider, which is that local area network side of things. So we got you covered here. We just have to put more thought and consideration behind our local area networks too.
Awesome. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more discussions like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button.